to go.
All right. I should have this stuff pulled up. I'm getting compensated with my conversations. There we go. All right. So first start just with your name, where you're from, and who you are.
Uh, my name is Keith Rhodes. I'm from Wilmington, North Carolina. I was brought up in South Philadelphia, and we moved to Wilmington when I was really young. But I claim Wilmington as my set. Um, I've been rocking here for, it seems like eternity, but I'm a chef here in Wilmington, multiple restaurants. Grew up here, a lot of friends here, and of course, I'm an owner of an MPV, former owner.
So, do you remember what year you got your MPV?
I got my MPV in 1997. Yeah.
And what was the influence for you to get your MPV?
I think one of the influences for me purchasing that Mazda MPV was just kind of at that time the culture, and it was the hip hop culture was real strong. The minivan or the MPV was just real hot in New York, and New York was the hottest mecca for hip hop ever. You know what I mean? So it was a hip hop thing. It was a street thing, and if you was in tune, you had a nice MPV. Yeah.
All right, speaking of a nice MPV, just describe the MPV that you had.
Well, the MPV I had was when I bought it, it was all white. It was white with a gray interior, and we had plans for that. So I got it painted Porsche red, and at that time, I think that paint job cost me about $4,000 for that paint job, and we wanted, it was a sport kind of thing, It was kind of like having the nicest boat, but it was a street boat, you know what I mean? So at that time, we decked it out. I had a nice leather bra on the front of it. We had rims on it. We put the ski racks on the top, and being from the city, we didn't ever really make too many trips to the mountains, so it was all really like aesthetics. And of course, we had to put the sounds in there. So we had 315s in the back, Sony 505 receiver, and all that kind of good stuff in there, Alpine tuner. So man, I mean, you could hear me coming from blocks away with that.
What size was the rims? What kind of
Or
rims and tires?
I had them 90s 22s. They was 18-inch rims back then, but we had Mickey Thompson tires on the MPV back then. So those were the size rims that I rocked in. So we did 18-inch rims with Mickey Thompson tires, and those were a little bit more sport. So when you rode on the highway, it kind of gave you that little roar sound because they were like off-road kind of tires on it.
Yeah, Rod said the same thing. It's crazy how that's just crazy. So did you know anyone else at the time who had an MPV?
Yeah.
Actually, answer this one first. I guess it don't really matter, but who was the first that you remember to get an MPV?
I think when I was considering getting an MPV, the first person I saw that had one was a kid I used to know back in West Philadelphia, and he had a green one. And I saw that. When I saw that, I was like, man, I got to have one of those. And he had chrome on it, the whole nine. And when he would hit the block, man, it was just something about that. It was just the whole swag. And when you had that and you pulled up, and it was just something. So I said, when I get back, I got to get one when I got back to Wilmington. So when we got into Wilmington, I went to the dealership to buy one, but I didn't really see anybody who had one at that time. And so I went and copped one. But I knew at that time, if I got it, it had to be high. So I said to take the white one and to put the Porsche red on it was going to be something that was going to be, no one would ever have another one like that, especially here in Wilmington. And so I paid for the paint job and I got one. And I'm going to tell you what, man, it was an eye turner. It was a stunner no matter where I went. It was it.
So like later on, did you know anyone else around the same time that did eventually got an MPV?
Yeah. Later on, we stayed in Wilmington, so I was on the south side of Wilmington. We stayed a block or two away from Gervais. I was on 7th Street between Worcester and Dawson. So as you moved a little bit closer off of Mirror Street, right behind Gervais, Big Rod stayed over there, and he had the 4x4 lifted MPV, which was like we call that the Bumblebee because it was really nice and yellow, and man, and he was a big dude with a big van, and everything just worked and gelled really well. We was all playing the streets back then, and so it was no competition, but it was just mano y mano. It was just like, wow, you know what I mean? We both got 2 live rides, not a couple blocks from one another. And the thing about it is, after that, then we had other folks from around town that added on, but nothing had that flavor like those right there. Those are the 2 standout MPVs of Wilmington at that time. And nothing ever moved forward with that, you know what I mean? Because the body style changed, but at that moment, that's what it was. And if you was in the streets, you knew these vehicles were what it was.
So you don't feel like Slick Rod was on that level with the white one?
I think that when Slick Rod came, it was right kind of after the peak, after the peak of it all. But his was always clean, you know what I'm saying? And I know Slick Rod today, I think at maybe somewhere around towards when he got his, I think I ended up selling mine. And what's so crazy is, he always kept it clean, really clean. And now that's what he does, I think he owns a detailing business, you know what I'm saying? So, they just kind of transfer. That was something he was passionate about at that time. Fast forward double-digit years later, that's what he's doing right now. So, yeah.
Yeah. We, like I said, we had him on, and he had this work shirt on and everything. So, what's one of your favorite moments you remember with driving MPV?
Man, some of the favorite moments. I can't say one because anytime you got in that ride, to me that was like a Rolls Royce back then. So it was all love, no matter what I did. And back then I was wild. Back then, there's nothing like I am now. This was BC Chef Rhodes. So it wasn't nothing for us. We'd I get an ounce of weed. We go get some Moet champagne and get some Alizé. And we ride around drinking and smoking all the time. And so it was nothing to go and hit the block, pull over, pop the back. You got the music playing, the blunts in rotation, and that was kind of what it was at that time. So every time I got in that car, it was something special. You know what I'm trying to tell you? So I can't just remember one time, like one car show, us all getting together and riding down the line. It was just a special. I felt special every time I drove that car.
So talking about driving down the line, are you talking about like Castle Street? If you got any, like when Castle Street used to be like a strip, you got any stories about the strip driving MPV?
Yeah, well, at that time, a lot of the stories that I could share about being in the MPV are kind of unsaid. It was a creeper. It was around, but you didn't see it all the time. And because I was in the streets, I ended up moving away from in Wilmington, and we moved to the country down in Bolivia where I could get a little bit more peace. And there was a couple of brothers down in the country that had some too. They had some white ones down in there that they were driving too, especially over there in the Navassa area. I was staying down in Bolivia at the time, but yeah, man, I didn't try to play the limelight like that. If you saw it, you saw it. If you caught me on 8th and Dock, then I was there. If you caught me riding through Taylor Homes or Houston Moore, then I was there. But otherwise, I wasn't just like posted up anywhere like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So what's some of the cars after? So what did you own before the MPV? Did you have a car before that?
So before I bought the MPV, I had a BMW 3 Series. Um, I had a Honda Accord before that. After that, I ended up buying a Mazda Millennium, a navy blue Mazda Millennium, Toyota Camry. I mean, I went through a lot of cars back then, not just by choice, but my wife had to drive, and things just changed a little bit. Family, I went from being a husband with 2 little kids to being a dad and a father of 2 young teenagers. So things kind of changed, you know what I mean? So the set kind of changed a little bit. Oh yeah, and we ended up buying, I think for a very long time, I bought the Yukon, the GMC Yukon. So from when I got rid of that MPV in the early 2000s, every time they changed the body style, I'd go buy a new one. And then finally my kids got grown, and so I bought my wife a GL 550 Mercedes. Yeah, so and they need to ride everybody together then. And I got a S500. Yeah, so we changed it up a little bit. And I drive a Chevrolet, what do you call that thing? Not a Silverado, 4-door Silverado, big boy, big truck. Yeah, that was my thing. After that, kind of, we moved into the larger scale trucks and everything. Yeah.
So afterwards, you got the Chevrolet Yukon. Do you know, or not the Chevrolet, the GMC Yukon? A lot of other people went to like the Tahoe or the Suburban. Is there any particular reason that made you get the Yukon instead of the more traditional, what seems to be the more traditional Tahoe or Suburban?
Well, the reason I went for the Yukon was because they had colors that the Chevrolet Tahoe didn't have. And I remember we had a really nice brown one that the box style, the one that was really more popular at that time. And then we changed when they went for the more rounded body style. We got a gold Yukon. I had never seen, I'm talking about factory. I had never seen a Chevrolet that color. Then we went and I was trying to get another gold Yukon, a newer one, but they were having problems with the paint coming off the assembly line. And so all the new Yukons at that time would have orange peel in the paint. And so I remember I bought one, a brand new one, 10 miles on it, and got it home. And I remember, man, a couple of days later, I was out looking at it. I could see the orange peel, and I took it back to the place. He said, well, pick out any one you want, and you can just get another one. But they all had it on there. And so I ended up getting a gray one, kind of like a charcoal gray. Still was relatively new for anybody to have around here. And you couldn't see the orange peel in there, but that was not the color that I had wanted. They hadn't even put the colors, they had them where you could order them, but they hadn't even sprayed them yet because they were having that issue with that orange peel on there. So I finally was just like, you know what, man, I think I've run my course with the Yukon deal. And so right after that, I ended up, it's so many cars, man, when I go to think about it, now we talking, I had the big body, the bubble Chevrolet Impala, and then we went down to the next size, the next model Chevrolet Impala. Then
what year?
Oh man,
so are you talking about the old school? Or
so I had a 2000, a 97, a 2007 Impala. I have all these years. So I had the really big one, like Ice Cube driving the All About the Benjamins. I had that Impala. Then I had the next Impala that the police drove here in Wilmington. And then I had a 2007 Impala, which still some police kind of drove around here. And about a couple of months ago, I was down in Charleston with my son driving one day, and I bought another Impala. I bought 2015, the new body style Impala, a burgundy one, because my son was my son was like, I asked him, I said, your 2000, I gave him the 2007. I said, I said, this car getting a little old right now. I said, we need to do something before it start giving you some problems or whatever. And he's real particular. He was like, well, I don't want a black one. I don't want a white one. And I said, well, those are the ones you get the good deals on price-wise. He said, I want a burgundy one, like a red burgundy. He said, I don't see anybody driving those or whatever. And we was cruising one day, just a father-son day. We was down in Charleston, and we rode down the street, and I saw one at a dealership, man. I was like, let me get that. And we went in there and bought it and drove it back home. So it's been many a vehicle, you know what I'm saying? But nothing was like that, though.
Yeah.
Nothing was like that.
So, is there any out of all the cars that you got? How many of those vehicles, or what vehicle do you feel like maybe like hip hop music influenced you to buy?
I think out of all the vehicles that I bought, besides the MPV, because the MPV would be the number one. That was the number one hip hop influence. But because of the culture that we grew up in and everything, I would probably have to say that S-Class is it. That was it. Because it's when I bought that, it was kind of, I've always wanted one ever since the Miami Vice days when I was young and used to watch them on Miami Vice. I always wanted a white Mercedes, the S-Class. That's what I wanted. Always wanted it. It's that kind of thing where you seen it, and at that time, all the major drug dealers and players in Miami had it. Gutierrez, Riviera, all the people they showed you on TV, they had the Benz. They rolled in nothing else but the Benz with BBS rims. At that time, that's what was on cars then, and that was it. They had the ground effects kits on them, and I was like, man, one day I'm gonna buy one of those. And I had a homeboy who works up to the Volvo dealership call me one day and said, I got something I want you to come look at. I said, we just got it. And it was a burgundy S-Class, tan interior, super dope, hybrid. You don't see those hardly ever, S-Class hybrids. I bought that, and I put some gold 22s on it. Totally different because it's trimmed in chrome. So I didn't want to put the chrome on it. I wanted to do something that was just so different. So when I wrote it, more of a how can I say, a grown-up hip hop style. And so I put that on there, and it is an eye turner. It's my new MPV. You know what I'm saying? And I don't have to drive it hardly ever. You know what I'm saying? But that's it. That is all eyes on me when I drive it. And it's really, really nice. It's got everything and anything that you want in a car. V8, TVs, dual sunroofs, everything. And I it's just something that I like. I might buy a new one. You know what I'm saying? That's what I've been waiting on. And then the Corona hit us right quick. But I always been a car guy, and I would always say that MPV was a jump off for me because it was something that was attainable. We did it right, and I think at that moment, even though it was inspired by New York culture, I think that for us at that time, there was no internet. There was no Instagram, no Facebook, no none of that. I think we was just jumping off with America Online. We had to sit there and wait for the long beep to even get online to see what was online, which wasn't much. But I think for us, we were still going to the grocery store and looking at magazines and car magazines. And I have to go ahead and just say that I think that Lowrider magazine was just one of those kind of things where, one of the things before the MPV got really big was lowrider trucks. That was a big thing around here. That was really big. People buying the little Nissans, the little Chevy S10s. I never had one. I never really wanted one of those. But those toy-like trucks like that, people had them all the time. And on the West Coast, once I got a little bit older and started traveling a lot, that was something people just doubled down on their vehicles. It didn't matter what it was. It didn't matter whether it was a F-150 or a 79 Malibu. People kept them clean. They kept them nice. They kept them kind of original. You know what I'm saying? And I think that was something that kind of really sparked that interest in me with vehicles, and brand loyalty a little bit. One of the big things about only reason I bought Chevrolet Impala, one of the main reasons I bought the Mazda MPV, and I'll go ahead and say as well as my Mercedes. One thing that most people would never even realize, the reason I bought all of those kind of cars is because they have the gear shift in the column. I'm a big man, so when I drive, when my leg leans, if it has the console right here, my leg gets really stiff and it hurts a lot. And so I always wanted to get a vehicle that didn't have the console in the middle to shift. So all the Impalas had it in the column. The MPV had it in the column. It didn't have it in the, where you shifted it in the middle. Even the S-Class has it on the button. You shift the gears on the column. So that was a big reason why I chose those particular type of cars. And if I had one that had the gear shift in it, normally I wouldn't drive it. I'd give it to my wife to drive or something like that, like the Camry or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, man.
So, man, you took me on a ride, and I kept wanting to get off and stop, but I wanted you to keep going. You said, like, have you ever done like the box Chevys or the old school Impalas?
I had a 1981 Chevrolet Impala, a light green one. That was the box Chevy. And my grandfather gave me that because he bought a brand new, at that time, I want to say maybe it was a 85 Caprice Classic Brougham. It was navy blue with the vinyl top on it. It was still a box style. So I got the Impala. He got the Caprice Classic my granddad had. And so he gave me that green box Chevy. But I tell you what, I drove it until literally it blew up. I remember pulling in the yard one day and it was overheated. I remember popping the hood and the cap flew off with rust water coming out of the radiator, you know what I'm saying? Where it had it, but I drove that car. I remember going down Gordon Road in front of Parkwood one day, and it had snowed. And I hit the brakes in that car, and we went spinning. I didn't hit no other car. It was late at night, but I remember spinning in that car, man. So I don't know, it's something about that Impala. And again, it was in the gear shift, in the column, I mean, and not in the thing. So yeah, man,
Okay. Mm-hmm. So you obviously buy a lot of cars. When you get a new car, do you got like a go-to song or record that you play? Any what's your favorite music, or if you one of your favorite ride to songs?
Oh man, one of my favorite ride to songs when I'm christening in a car. That's a good question, man, because I'm a dude who like all kinds of music, but my ride music is always probably going to be house music. I'm a big house music fan. Always have been from day one. Not too big into the tech kind of thing, but I love good house music. And I like chill hop, that kind of thing as well. I'm a loyalist when it comes to hip hop. I love jazz and all of that. But man, I listen to this program, and this is what I ride to most of the time. This thing called Deeper Shades of House. Yeah, man. Matter of fact, I listen to that all the time. So a lot of times, like when I drove that Impala back from Charleston that we just bought, I hooked up the iPhone right there, Deeper Shades of House. You do about an hour, 2 hour mix. I can drove all the way here listening to that, man. And I mean, some of the best times, because it put me in that zone. You know what I'm saying? I don't need no DMX to get amped. You know what I mean? When I'm driving down the road, I need something, kind of chill. And then I'm all about that house music, man.
Okay.
Yeah, man.
Is there any particular like hip hop songs that make you think of a car, or any car that make you think of a particular hip hop song?
Man, I will tell you a few songs that make me think about music, and I'm gonna tell you that MPV. There were a couple of albums at that time that I think about that just comes right to the forefront. Wu-Tang, you know, that that album, and then the one with Can It Be All So Simple, babe? Yeah, I just remember listening to that. But back then, man, back then, it was mixtapes because I sold a lot of mixtapes back then. So back then, that's what we listened to. So when I hear that, I hear the next mix coming on, Smith and Wesson, Bucktown, home of the original. I hear the mix coming on, and those were the things. So the Roots, Philadelphia Life, that album. How many times did I play that over and over? So Black Moon, all of those were at that time of what I played a lot of back then. What's my man? OC, Diamond D, all of those kind of things. And it was more New York than anything, but Ron G mixtapes, Double R mixtapes, Doo-Wop mixtapes. I mean, you Kid Capri, all of those. That's what you listened to at that time in the MPV. You wasn't doing nothing if you didn't have a solid mixtape. And shit, I might as well go ahead and say, because he on the scene right now, DJ Kashim. You know what I'm saying? We can't forget about the hometown hero because he was just as nice and still is as any of those DJs at the time. So, we got to give it, people talk about all of those different DJs, but he was one where you had to have a Kashim mixtape. And he was nice. And I did my trips. I bought master tapes in New York, in Manhattan, in Harlem, all the time. I got to the place where I didn't even have to go up there. They would send them as soon as they came out. The dudes would send them right to me. That's another street legend type thing right there. But that's what we listened to. You had to have a hot mixtape right there. Doo-Wop, Summer Jams '97, Jazzy Joyce mixtapes. That was it, man. That was it. Showtime was Buck Wild. All them DJs, man. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what it was. Yeah.
Mr. Freeze Records.
What? The Raleigh? What? Then I think they opened up one of those down here.
Kashim.
They had one down here. I never had to go there because I had all the mixtapes. We were taking them around and putting them in different stores, 10th Street store and different stuff like that. So when you go in there and you see the tapes that was in there, that was it. I had a big Tascam. So I put the one tape in here, have six blanks right here, press the button, and it'll copy all of them. So we did that all the time. You know what I'm saying? It was a little hustle,
So good. Anything else you think I might have missed on, didn't bring up, as far as just because this whole thing is not just about like you, of course, a lot about the MPV, but the whole thing is just kind of about how hip hop and car culture kind of that intersection between hip hop and car culture. So anything that you think I might have missed on or didn't catch?
Yeah, I think that at that time, another vehicle that was just like, it was like next level that a lot of people didn't have, but if you had it, somebody knew you was making paper. Of course, any Mercedes was like that, but that was really rare. That was out of touch for most people. But there's a kid that stayed in town named Steady B. He no longer with us right now, but he had a white Jetta, a blue rag top on it, with rims and everything. You talking about out of this world. It was something. It was all white too, and he had the custom rag on it. I don't know. It was another dude named LeGrant. Used to stay in town off of Gray Street. I think he do music right now. Another old school nigga. You know what I mean? But he used to have an all black Toyota 4Runner. Them 4Runners and them Land Cruisers was another next level. So a lot of times the boys come from up top. They come down here and whether they in Garden Lake or Dove Meadows or whatever, they got a nice Land Cruiser that they riding around in. That said something right there, And, I was one of them dudes, man, who didn't even really wear the Timberlands like that. I was a little different. I really wasn't feeling the heavy boots like that. I don't wear them now. I just didn't. My son just went down to the outlet and spent some money and bought some, and I don't see it why. I was more of a Nike guy. Now, I'll tell you, as sure as my name is Keith Rhodes, I've never owned a pair of Air Jordans. Never in my life have I owned a pair of Air Jordans. Now, I've always wanted them. They're not unattainable, but I never owned a pair. When I grew up, man, that wasn't really like that big deal. You know what I'm saying? You wore what you had, whatever. I wore a lot of Air Max back then. That was my choice. I'd spend my paper and go buy some 95 Air Max or some Air Max boots or something like that, but I ain't never messed with the Jordans or nothing like that. But I think that Land Cruiser thing was big, was big back then. The sports cars, people hadn't really got into the sports car thing yet, you know what I mean? Because, again, when we're looking at New York was setting the pace for everything. And only the dudes who weren't in the hood had the sports car. They came through the hood, but people who were in the hood, that's what they drove. They drove MPVs. They drove Land Cruisers, Tahoes, the Blazer, the big body Blazer, two-door Blazer. My homeboy used to have one of them. Was it Z14? Something like that. It was a Chevrolet version of the Bronco, the OJ. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
What about, and this would be the last question, kind of wrap it up. Another thing I know, because you're a little bit older than me, how about the Jeep Wrangler? What about like the Jeep Wranglers, the Amiga, like all the SUVs, kind of like the Blazer that you could take the top off? How popular were they? Or was that a little bit later?
Man, when you talk about other influential brands and cars that had their moment, and I think Jeeps were always popular. You didn't see everybody who rocked them. It was a certain kind of folk that kind of rocked that Jeep Renegade and maybe the Amigos or something of that nature, the Raiders, the Dodge Raiders kind of thing, or the Montero Jeeps and things like that. That was all an era right there. But in that same breath as the Mazda MPV, you had the Suzuki Samurai. And that was a whole nother conversation right there of a vehicle right there. That was something that a lot of people had them. They were small little pill boxes, but in the city, everybody had one of those. Everybody wanted one of those. That was kind of like that was the beginning Hyundai that was halfway sporty. And so it'd be people like me, 6'4", 300 some pounds, packed up in there, for us riding in there like we was doing something. You know what I mean? And practically all four of us could pick that whole thing up. You know what I mean? That's how light it would be. But yeah, man, don't. I can't disrespect the Suzuki Samurai, man. It had its moment, man. Yeah, it wasn't long lived, but it had its moment.
I remember seeing it on 8th Street Park. Is the Samurai and the Sidekick the same thing?
The Sidekick was a little bit more of the sport utility. It had a little bit more rounding on it. The Samurai was just like a square box. It was very short in the back at all. It was like hyper dangerous to even be in that thing, driving that thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that was big. That was big. And Yugos was big then. You know about the Yugo? I don't know. You might not know about the Yugo or the K car. Do the research on that. The Yugo, I think that was the Russian car at the time.
It's a square car, like a square little car.
Yeah, man. And those kind of cars like that were like mad popular. People drove them all the time. You know what I mean? My neighbor, when I grew up, had a Toyota Supra when I was young. He drove one of the buses for school, and man, he kept that. He had a Celica first, then he got the Supra. And I'm gonna tell you what, you're talking about a nice, and people don't drive even now. They don't drive the Supras like that. But that was, Toyota was always premium. You know what I'm saying back then. Mazda was just stepping on the scene. I think that if Toyota had their version of the MPV, we probably would have rocked Toyota. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're not really
They had the egg. They had that egg, man. Prima, Previa, something like that. Yeah.
So one more time, just your name, where you from, all the info, and we'll close it out.
I'm Chef Keith Rhodes, Wilmington, North Carolina. I'm from Philadelphia. I'm owner of Catch Restaurant, Catch the Food Truck, a few other things here. I am a former owner of a Mazda MPV in the heart of 90s hip hop culture.
Sweet. Rap.
Right.
Cool.
That was good.
That was real good.